I need us to get side by side too, so I'll do that in a minute.
Okay.
Hold on, we are live, but I want to side by, there we are, yay! Hi there, everybody. This is Christine Lackey with Untangled Mom, and let's untangle this. And what is this? It is day four of a week talking about body image. And it's talking about body image for all of us, whether you are a mom, a woman, a man, I don't care what in the world you are. My focus generally is around parenting and family. But if you are, you don't have to be a parent to listen to the cues and the things that we're talking about here. And my guest today is Maia Huey.
Hi.
The lovely Maia Huey. And I have been reading part of what Maia has done as a successful, amazing, wonderful, do you like how I'm doing that? Wonderful, influential young women. And I'm gonna read this one more time because I think it's really important. And then I want you to sort of share a little bit more, and then I want to bring in some of the things that we've talked about and ask you some questions, because so far this week I've had two moms and we have discussed some of the subliminal messages that they've picked up and how it's affected them and how they carried that through life and their body image, right? And what I share with people is what I'm doing is interviewing the experts, and the experts for me are moms, because we are and dads, parents, because we are in the trenches doing this every single day. And the more we can have these conversations about what we get right, what we get wrong, what we fix, and how we fix it, I think the better we are. So Miss Maia Huey, and you're going to have to tell me more about what you do now, but from what we do here is in high school as a part of the Boulder Youth Body Alliance. Okay, before I even go any further, what the hell was that, Maia?
So the Boulder Youth Body Alliance was an extracurricular program run by the amazing Carmen Cool. You can find her on Facebook. She is a psychologist, she's an author, and she was a mentor to me, saved my life, I'm sure, along with many others. And she had a group of teenagers in the Boulder Valley School District from all the high schools in our area get together and just discuss body image. We talked about eating disorders. We got really close as a group, opening up to each other. And a lot of what we did was we got educated on what body image even means and what that word means, what words like eating disorders and disordered eating is. We talked about the stigmas in our culture. We talked about health at every size. We talked about nutrition. I mean, we really tried to cover a little bit of everything. And then we would go speak at health classes in the Boulder Valley School District and talk about health at every size. And we talk about all of these topics. And a big one that we would talk about in public schools is bullying, because at the time, the Boulder Valley School District had no regulations in their bullying program for weight intolerance, for weight bullying, for weight discrimination. And the BYBA program was actually the program that got weight discrimination added to a list of bullying intolerance in BVSD, because they didn't even know what that was before, and kids were getting bullied. So, that's just a piece of what we did. And then the big thing that we did was that we went to DC, I believe it was in 2012 or 2013, and we lobbied in Congress to pass the FREED Act, which is the federal response to end eating disorders. And it did eventually pass, but basically the act helped fund research for eating disorders, because all of the numbers that at least we had at the time were from people coming forward and saying, hey, I have one. And so they weren't super accurate. We were really relying on people to be transparent. And it was also to support people getting help and getting that help, like rehabs, covered by insurance. So that did eventually get passed, but it was an amazing group that I was a part of. It impacted my life forever. Definitely.
Wow. So we've just jumped in really fast. And as you can tell, she is a beautiful speaker and has so much to offer us, which I'm really, really excited about. We're talking about Boulder because we live in Colorado collectively. I'm in Boulder and you are now in
Durango, Colorado.
Yeah. So we love the mountains.
Yes.
And I want to share quickly before I jump back in, because I'm so excited now by everything you just said. How I know Miss Maia is twofold in a way. I know her father, who has Fire Mount. What does your dad have out here? What do you call it?
He has Fire Mountain Residential Treatment Center. So it's inpatient residential treatment for teens struggling with drug addiction and behavioral disorders.
Yes, which I'm a big fan of. We get to our kids early enough and they don't have to have all this stuff later on in life. So I'm a big supporter, even start younger than teens, but any of us who collectively can come together to help our kids, I'm all about that. I met Maia years ago when she babysat my children. And to date, my children still talk about, where's Maia? Why do we have to have this babysitter? Where did she go, Mom? Because there was just this beautiful embrace that you offered my kiddos, right? And I gravitate toward, I'm a firm believer in the more our children feel loved, the more secure they feel. And the more secure they feel, the more confident they are, and they can go out in the world and do anything. So that's why I try to be conscious of the people that I surround my kids with, right? So I'm gonna jump in with you, girlfriend. Oh my gosh. So the bullying part, I don't think, oh my gosh, I have such goosebumps. I don't think when we think about body image, that we think about it in the context of bullying. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I had Kimberly Langsfeld on Tuesday, and she talked about how her sister was overweight and people bullied her, okay? And she herself started to bully her own sister. And today she lives with a ton of regret and guilt about that. And then yesterday I spoke with Kirsten, and she talked about, in a way, her brother bullied her too, because her brother would make comments about her thighs and her rear end in front of people, creating this shame.
Yeah.
Right? So bullying, it doesn't necessarily have to happen at school, but it does.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a big thing we talked about, not just bullying for people who struggled being overweight, but underweight as well. And that just assumption as somebody, if I'm going to be a bully and make an assumption about somebody based on their, regardless of whether they're big or small or tall or they're short. I mean, we talked so much in BYBA about, like, can you even be shaped correctly? I mean, what can you look like to not be self-conscious about something? But it went to both sides of the spectrum. I mean, there were girls in our group that they were really tall and they talked about being called giraffe in school, or they talked about being called toothpick or something like that. And then on the other side, kids who struggled with being overweight, just all those horrible comments that people make. And you're exactly right that sometimes it came from at home or from parents who were just not thinking about what they were saying, and they make a joke that just sticks forever.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. I know I was called olive oil, and I'm even working with a young, beautiful, beautiful woman she says she's 6'1". We've only met through Zoom so far. And she's just like, I feel like a freak. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so much of what this week is about is those little comments. They add up, and people just don't understand what we're saying to each other, and in all the work that you did, your personal opinion, okay? Because I feel like we come in here a clean slate, and we are pure. You look at little kids, they're pure love, and they're accepting, and they love everybody. Where the hell does this come from? What's your opinion on that?
We used to do this this game with kids where it's called the Snowball Game, and we'd have people write, what was the first time that you felt self-conscious about yourself? And people would write just a sentence like, I was in 5th grade and someone said this, and the youngest we saw, somebody said, I remember I was on my 4th birthday and my grandma made a comment about how much cake I was eating. I mean, it starts so young. And right. So I don't know if there's an answer for where does it come from, because we have, especially the fact that weight discrimination and even that concept being not tolerated in schools is so young. I don't think people are necessarily aware of how much kids are exposed to with weight bullying. And even if the kid is getting bullied, but they witness it, they might think it's okay, depending on how they were raised, and maybe they bully about other things, but no, I mean, you could have a kid just observe it and pick that up and think it's okay. And we still see it even in the media that kids watch. There's the funny fat character or something like that, that even if it's not something that we might consider direct bullying, there's stereotypes that I think just as much bullying as saying a mean sentence to somebody, and kids are raised with those stereotypes in mind.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been talking about, and I'm a firm believer in this, is the sense of needing to belong. We want to feel seen, heard, and accepted. And little ones are like, they put on the little plays and they do all this stuff because they're so craving to be seen, because to be seen nurtures who they are. And their bodies are basically chemically wired to mirror and pull in everything that they see, right? And they need to belong. And I wonder, like with families, sometimes, it's like when Kim on Tuesday was saying how she even called her sister fat. Sometimes I even think, she's trying to belong with everybody else too, by taking on these words and judgments that she might not even believe. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, any kid who bullies without realizing, now they're training counselors and people in that position to think, okay, well, what's happening to that kid at home? They had an issue. I know it was happening in Boulder. I'm sure it's happened everywhere, where, kids were violently bullying other kids, and their punishment was to not come to school and stay home. And then you have to wonder, well, are they being treated that way at home? Because at some point they've been taught that behavior is okay, and we hope it's not by the parents, but instead of sitting down and really trying to figure out from the bully, hey, what's going on, where's your coming from, you don't heal the situation by just saying you're bad, because then you're basically bullying the bully. It's a really dangerous cycle, especially when it comes to weight discrimination, because you could have somebody who's bullying somebody because of their weight, because they were bullied because of their weight by a family.
That's right.
And then it just keeps going back, and it's never talked about, because you just get in trouble and then
that's right,
passed off.
Yeah. And the thing too is like with this young woman that I'm working with, the pain is so deep from the shame, the woman who's taller, from the shame of everything that she was called when she was younger, that even today, so many years later, she starts talking about it, and the shame and the pain is so strong. And I need people to hear this, because I think it's just such an important thing to know. Is this like, when we make our little comments that we think are so funny, they're not. They're not. And I've seen before, I'm like, hey, will you stop teasing her that way? Oh, come on, get a thicker skin. It's funny. This is the world. Get a thicker skin. And I'm like, it hurts.
Yeah.
And you had said something too about witnessing. My son, for him, what happens for him is when he sees somebody bullying or making nasty comments, the fact that he can't stop it, it kills his heart. I mean, he'll come home and he's just like, we'll talk about it. It's like, there's nothing I can do, and it hurts so bad. And I think that we're so much more sensitive than we realize, and I started writing something today, and hopefully I'll have it up tomorrow. I was thinking about this, when my daughter started, probably, I'm going to say like 4th, 5th grade, going into middle school, started looking in the mirror a lot and like really checking herself out, and then the comments are, what you looking at? Like what you see? You're going to break that mirror if you look in it more. And all of a sudden I'm like, what am I saying? What am I saying? Like, I'm making these comments, right? So I sat with, I'm like, and I'm all about curiosity. Get curious.
Right.
And so if we get curious, then we can meet each other in that place, and it's a safer place to meet. And I started getting curious about it. I'm like, her body's changing.
Right.
And it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And she's looking at herself. And the message I'm telling her, or all of us are telling our kids when they're looking in the mirror, is like, what's wrong with you? You're arrogant.
Right.
It's like, it's just amazing to me how subtle these messages are.
Yeah, well, and I think especially in the body positivity community, because it kind of is, it's this huge movement. It's kind of like, well, love yourself, but not too much and not too loudly, because then you're totally, like you said, you're arrogant and you're self-centered. But be proud and like what you see in the mirror, but don't say it out loud, because maybe someone else isn't happy with themselves, and you could hurt their feelings by being proud of yourself. So it's like, and that kind of goes back to like, what shape can you be in and not get bullied? It's like,
Right.
where's that line that we can walk, that you can be happy and like yourself and like the way you look and say that confidently, and it doesn't have to be about somebody else, and you could still support that other person. I mean, it's so hard to send the right message. And I like that you said that curiosity is such a good thing, because I think with my parents, when I was really struggling with body image in high school, and I wouldn't say I had an eating disorder, I would say disordered eating was more my situation. But when, I mean, my parents didn't know. I'm not going to go and tell them. I'm not saying, hey, just so you guys know, I'm not really eating. You know, of course, no teenager is going to do that. But when I did finally talk to them about it, and they were like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I was like, you kind of never asked. I mean, there was kind of just this assumption, like,
Yes.
it's everything's fine. Or when you thought that I was overweight, the suggestion was work out. And then when I was no longer, it was just compliments. So what does that teach me as a kid? That, you know, and when I went to the doctor, and they don't ask me about my diet, they don't talk to me about my weight, they just say, you weigh less than you did before, good job, keep doing what you're doing. And so my brain was like, great, skip 3 meals a day, work out constantly. I mean, it's at like, ask your kids. And I think the best, I mean, we had parents ask us when we were in BYBA about, well, how do I talk to my kids about eating disorder? Like, ask them. I mean, kids, like you said, when Ryder comes home and expresses how he feels when he sees bullying, I mean, kids are insightful, they're smart, and they're observing so much more than really I think adults are, because they're taking everything in and they're learning so much. And I think if you can just sit down and ask, and when they're uncomfortable, ask why they're uncomfortable. Why don't they want to talk about it? And maybe you're not the person they're going to talk to, but then maybe get them somebody they can talk to. You know,
That's right.
Powerful tool, especially when it comes to these things that, I mean, how can you just tell a kid, especially a teenager going through puberty, oh, just be confident? It's so, I mean, it's,
Well, what does that even mean?
right.
Especially, I mean, what does it even mean? Just be confident. It's like,
Right.
so if I'm to be confident, then I should probably look different, act different, act like
Right.
I'm not somebody else. So you said you didn't have an eating disorder, but you had disordered eating. What did that mean?
So we defined the difference in BYBA when we talked about the difference in eating disorder. It is the same as oh my gosh, words. It is the same in the DSM-5, which is the psychology manual basically for mental health disorders. It's equal. So having an eating disorder or body dysmorphia is a diagnosable situation that is on the same level medically as having anxiety, having depression. Disordered eating is not, it is more of a behavior. It's a learned behavior, and it's a coping mechanism, but it's not necessarily a diagnosed situation. So for me, my disordered eating was more learned, that I had issues going on in my own personal life, that I found control in food and not having food. And when I learned that it was kind of my choice when I ate and what I ate, and that I could just say to my parents, oh, sure, yeah, I ate. Or I say to my friends, yeah, I had a big breakfast, that's why I don't have lunch. Or, you know, I found ways to kind of maneuver. And there were layers to some of the feeling hungry was feeling something. And then there was, I'm controlling my food because I didn't have control over anything else in my life. And also I can make people believe anything. So there's like these layers of control that kind of sprout from really this, just the core issue was all of these other personal issues I had happening in my life. So that would be kind of the, I guess, the difference that I would give it, if that makes sense.
Because I suffered with an eating disorder. So I went to college. When I got there, I think that need for control is at the bottom of a lot of stuff. And it's because we don't feel good as we are. And oftentimes we don't feel good as we are because we don't feel like we're accepted and loved and received in as we are and belong. And so when I got to college, I was anorexic, then I was bulimic, then I was overeater, then I was bulimic, and all of that stuff. And it's an interesting thing for me because I think that when we struggle with eating and body, it's it has different layers, and we all come from it from a different perspective, and there's reasons why, and I know for me it was very emotional. It wasn't so much about what my body looked like, and it wasn't about I want to be in control of what I want to be in control of at all.
Right.
I just knew that I felt empty. I felt like I was confused. I felt like I had nothing to offer,
Right.
and it was purely emotional for me, because I felt like I didn't exist. I would go into a room of people, and it's something that I still have to work on too, by the way, where I can walk into a room of people and feel like I'm completely invisible,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where my eating disorder came from, is because like you said, and one of the things you said, I felt something, but it wasn't a need to be in control for me. It was I need to do something other than what I was doing, and I didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew I felt awful.
Yeah, and I think it's how do I explain, like, the need to feel something. I think that it's easy to attach it to things surface level, like, oh, I do this because I feel fat, or I do this because I feel too thin, or it is a body image thing and I'll be more beautiful if I'm this size. Those are things that our brain can comprehend, and our brain has a really hard time comprehending emotion. We don't truly understand, even the experts don't truly understand. We get kind of the definition of sadness or depression. We don't know why it happens. And even when we can track the chemical, things happening in the brain, we don't know why they're doing that. And you can start to track trauma and all these things, but that's why our brain starts to kind of give us these options of behaviors that we can comprehend, even like eating or not eating. There are things that we can say there's a choice to eat food and I'm not going to, and we understand the feelings that come after that. And if that makes us feel whole or feel something or feel bad, but at least we're eliciting that. And it's really similar. It's similar to self-harm, where it's your brain knows if you hurt yourself, your brain knows how to deal with a physical pain. It doesn't know how to deal with emotional pain. And we saw that talking to young people who did struggle with eating disorders and disordered eating and body dysmorphia, is that, at least I believe, I won't say it as a fact because I don't know, but I do think that it is just another form of our body trying to make our internal emotions external so that we can at least try to deal with them.
Yeah. And I believe, like, with Kim and Kirsten over the last few days, we're talking about memories, and we talk about what I define and other practitioners define as crystallizing moments. Mm-hmm. And it's these crystallizing moments of pain and shame and hurt, and our bodies carry it forward. It's almost like we've got this picture right here of that moment in time. And that picture is, and there's some research that will say that the pains of yesterday, it's the pains of yesterday affect 80% of what we experience today. That's huge. It's not conscious. It's not in our awareness. It's not even in, it's weird to try to figure out. It's not in your conscious thought, right? But it is this picture of this moment in time that we never want to feel again.
Right.
But we do.
Right.
And it's that confusion of everything, of being like, I don't know why I feel what I feel.
Right. Well, it's almost like a little trauma, that impacts our brain so heavily. And there's that saying that for every one negative thought or comment, it takes 6 or something to replace it, or to kind of it. And especially when we're talking about these ages of kids who are observing everything, and then you start going through puberty and you're in middle school and high school. And I know, at least for me and my friends' experience, you don't get a whole lot of positive feedback in those years. It's really difficult to go through a whole day and not, even if it's not direct at you, experience something negative that really makes you question the choices that you make as an individual. And so I think that's why those years can be so hard, especially when we start talking about, body image, because the positive messages in the media either. So you could have the most supportive, open parents walking you through this, but you spend, a few hours with them in the morning and a few at night. And then for 7 hours a day, you're at school with maybe teachers who aren't that supportive, kids who are bullying, maybe the school's not doing much about it. And then they come home and watch TV, and then there's those messages, and they've been on Facebook and Instagram all day. And it's really difficult to intercept those negative messages with positivity.
And I'll say, when I work with adults, and here's where what I am so blessed by the work that I do and helping parents work with kids. I have the opportunity. I've worked with so many adults, and we go back to those crystallizing moments in time. And it could have been something when they were really little that they can now actually verbalize better than they could when they were little. So now I go, well, let me tell you what could be going on, because this is what so many people have experienced. So many crystallizing moments happen in middle school. So many parents and families that I work with today will be like, she was fine until middle school. I don't know what happened in middle school. I'll tell you what happens in middle school. So what happens when we're little, you've got your littles and they're at home and they could do their independent play beautifully. And then they've got their one friend that they hang out with. Well, when they go into middle school, it is a time of being a part of a group. That's when being part of a group is really important. And this is when belonging really snaps in. Like, I need to belong to something bigger than me. And that needs to be this group. So, and I was working with one woman who had shared her particular group of girls that they hung out with. She said their way of communicating was ragging on each other all the time and then laughing about it. And she said, I would go home at the end of the day feeling horrible, but I didn't learn how to communicate any differently. I didn't know how to do it. And even my daughter, who's 14, was sharing that she has a girlfriend who does that same means of communication. And when they've talked, and my daughter's like, the way you talk, it hurts and I don't like it. And that's why I don't want to hang out with you. And her friend said, but all my other friends do it. It's just what we do, and Riley was like, but it doesn't make it right.
Right.
And it hurts. And I think, coming back to parenting, because it's sort of like, as parents, what should we be looking for with our kids? What should we be asking? I hear so often parents are like, okay, when children are born in elementary school, I'm full on. Middle school, give them space. High school, come back. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, don't give them space in middle school. That's when they need you the most. And the kids that I work with too, they'll be like, they push their parents, but they don't really want to push them away. It is this time of like, where's my gas pedal? Where's my brake? Where's my gas pedal? Where's my brake? And by the way, please be on the receiving end of this, right?
Yeah. I think one thing that I experienced with my parents was that even through middle school and high school, when my brother and I, we'd get asked how our day was. Oh, it was fine. And that was it. That's all they got. But they still asked, even though they knew every time they're probably not going to get a whole in-depth story. And they'd ask me questions and they get one-word answers, because I'm trying to be an individual and I totally knew everything I was talking about because I was 13 and I knew everything. But growing up, looking back on that, knowing that it's that learning that lesson that they're always there, and that's what it's supposed to be as a parent. And like you said, in middle school, where kids are going to school and sometimes having traumatizing experiences at school and coming home, and even if they don't want to talk about it to you, and even if they're not interested, the fact that you ask and you persist, and even if it ends in a door slammed, you still asked and you still persisted, and the message is still like, I care and I love you. And I think that is so important. We'll come back to it. I can't remember what it was.
I will say that I think it's 100% spot on. The more people we feel like you have my back. If you have my back, I'll be okay. I even do couples work, and even with couples, oftentimes we'll start doing a couple of different things together and testing out different communication styles. And oftentimes the pain that is felt in relationship is, but I don't think you have my back anymore. And as soon as a partner feels like, oh, you have my back, like you do, it's like, oh, okay. And it's always so cute, really, too. It's sort of like the husband, when I share that with a husband, and then the husband's like, well, of course I have your back, babe. I do. You can see the wife go, oh, okay. And he's like, well, wait, the fight's over? She's like, sure. Yeah, you have my back, no problem, we're fine, and how important it is to always let each other know, I got you. And even in the context of school, like you're talking about, kids needing to be able to say, hey, that's not okay. And feeling like even their other friends have their back. It's so important. And it's, it goes to, there's a push to be so independent. You need to be so independent. But the thing is, we're not independent creatures.
Right.
We're interdependent creatures.
Right.
Well,
and I think encouraging kids to find a community of people that are supportive and cohesive together. If it's kids are supposed to go out and they're supposed to be separate from their parents and become their own individuals and then come home and have that bouncing board and that boundary. The point I was going to make too was, you said way back at the beginning of this conversation that you'll hear parents say she was fine until middle school. My mom literally said those words to me. And
I hear it all the time.
True. And I was going to say how quickly even really great, healthy communicative behavior can be unlearned. Because I feel like that's what happened to me. I went to a really progressive elementary school. I mean, we had consent education and sex education in 4th and 5th grade that was really kid friendly, but also so informative and so empowering as a kid to learn how to know and all of those things. And it was so accepting, and we were a very colorful community of kids and parents. It was a great school. And then I went to public school in middle school, and it was I remember the first day coming home and crying to my mom. I was like, you have to send me back basically to elementary school. I was like, this sucks. But how quickly all of these things were unlearned for me, like healthy communication around friendship. And I never bullied, but man, I became a bystander for a lot of things that in elementary school, I was never a bystander. I was always a kid that came up and broke up fights. And I communicated with my friends when they were being mean. In middle school, it was just totally went away because suddenly I didn't see other kids doing that. And I would have been a total sore thumb had I stood up and said something, had I spoken out, had I gone to a teacher. And I overheard what other kids said about kids who did that. And I just wanted to blend in. I just wanted to disappear into the crowd because it's so easy to be singled out and feel alone at that age. And that carried with me almost until my second year of college, where it suddenly clicked, wait, I know better than this. I learned in elementary school, and now it's coming back now that I'm an adult and I can put puzzle pieces together, and I'm, but I mean, how quickly that stuff can just be totally unlearned because of an unhealthy school environment, or environment in general. It doesn't even have to be school. Is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I was the bully in middle school. I was fine in elementary school, and in middle school, I was the bully. And I have contacted that young lady and apologized, just to let everybody know I have, and we are friends on Facebook. We are. And when I look back at it again, it's like, where did that come from? It came from, I was really unhappy. I didn't belong to anything. It allowed me to stand out in a group because I was doing something beyond that group and people were laughing at it, So I wasn't happy. It was able to stand out. And then the shame that I had for a lot, bullies don't like to bully. Right. They really don't. They might look like they do. They don't because something's not feeling right, and it's for us parents, it's about noticing these behaviors that are happening in our children and let go of belief systems of, oh, boys will be boys. Mm-hmm. They do that. Oh, siblings fight. They're supposed to fight. Oh, girls are mean. Mm-hmm. I hate these freaking things because first of all, they're not true. Second of all, if you see and hear that, have some responsibility and get involved. Right. Girls aren't mean. They're not. If you see that behavior, you have to know there's something else going on underneath. There is. They don't know how to communicate. They need you to help them communicate. We were talking about this yesterday, where my brother beat me up like nobody's business growing up. He beat the crap out of me, and we are very close, and I love him. He's the most wonderful man in the entire world. And as we got older, he said, I just wish somebody would have told me how to be with you different. I didn't know how to be with you any different. Right. I would get in trouble. I would get punished, but nobody told me how to do it. And right. With my kids, they're 4 years apart. They don't fight. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know if they've ever gotten into an argument. They may have gotten annoyed with each other, but in our house, you know, the communication with my kids is, if you need something, ask for it. If you don't like something, tell. And you speak to one another with respect, please. We're a team. And it works. It just works, and it translates out to the world. You know?
Yeah.
So based on some of the work you've done, if there were, you know, things that, how do I want to ask this question? Things that parents should look for in kids' behaviors, or what do you know? What should they be noticing that maybe their kid is struggling?
That is such a tough question.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's so different kid to kid. And I can say, I don't know if this is an answer, but I guess it's an example to, well, I grew up my brother and I are really close in age. We're only a year apart. And when we were younger, he was loud about his issues. Like we knew when stuff was going on because of his behavior was loud. He had anger, he'd lashed out, there was arguments, he picked fights at home, and I was quietly suffering. And so everybody thought I was okay. And so I would say, I mean, with or without siblings, but I think especially, I mean, quiet and good grades doesn't mean you're doing fine. And I think the best thing is just check in. And I think if you have the means, therapy is the best gift you can give to kids. I really do. There are things that I did not learn about myself until college, because I didn't go to therapy until college. And we tried when I was younger, and they told me I had ADHD and depression and anxiety and wanted to give me a bunch of prescriptions. And my parents were like, absolutely not. And then I came back to therapy as an adult, and they're like, you have ADHD and depression and anxiety. And now I have tools to handle that without, you know, I'm not going to take medication. That's my personal choice. But just there's things that are, I think, I'm trying to give actual advice, and it's just so hard. I think it's hard. And when I've heard from parents when we were in BYBA, we talked to groups of parents sometimes at schools, and they would just say, like, you know, I just don't even want to admit that my kid has anxiety or is bulimic. Like, and that was when I talked to my parents later, they're like, we didn't want to know that you had ADHD because that's difficult. And it was difficult for my parents. I think it's like, be willing to admit that your kid is struggling and just support and ask questions. And I don't even know if I could give signs, not being a mental health professional, because it's just so different. I know for me, a lot of mine was, I was quiet. With food specifically, I would, my dad would ask me if I packed a lunch for the day. I'd say, yep, didn't pack lunch at all. I'd go to school. My friends would ask me if I was hungry. No, I had a big breakfast, no lunch. And then I'd get home, like, oh, my lunch was really big, I'm not that hungry. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of looking for compliments based around my size. A lot of exercise, like lots of exercise and pushing it way too far. I had split households too. My parents were divorced. And so I could carry different stories back and forth and two different environments. I mean, it's just the best thing you can do is just ask and keep asking and keep reassuring, even if the kid tells you nothing, that you love them and you're here if they ever need to talk. Because that one day, even if the kid tells you they hate you and you're the worst mom ever, that one day, knowing that you said 3 months ago, if you ever need to talk, like, the kid will come to you eventually. Yeah. It could mean the difference. I wish there was a laundry list of, look, this behavior, the red flag, and there just isn't. And it differs from boys to girls, because the more research we do into eating disorders and body dysmorphia, more and more boys are coming forward saying, I have this. Yeah. And it's not just a girl's issue anymore. I mean, a lot of boys struggle with this, and they present very differently because their stigmas and standards are different.
Yeah. So you said two things there. One is you were the quiet one that got the good grades. Yeah. I can't tell you how many quiet ones with good grades that I work with. Yeah. And oftentimes, and before I say anything anymore, I want to say something. As parents, we're going to get it wrong. Ta-da. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to get it wrong. We're going to say things incorrectly. We're going to have negative and positive impacts on our children. That is called life. That is why I'm doing this, is because I want to talk to the ones that are in the trenches doing it with their kids, right? And recognizing that, look, you're going to get it right, you're going to get it wrong, and we have the opportunity to make a change. So often I work with families where one kiddo has bigger behavior, right? And that's their cry out, see me, I've got a problem. And the other kid goes invisible because so much of the family is focused there. And they keep looking at this kid and she's fine. Look, she's fine. But she's fine because she looks fine. But what happens is she feels invisible. This invisible child over here feels so lost and so empty and so unimportant. This is painful, really painful. Now, did the parents do anything wrong? No, they were doing the best that they could at the time. Sometimes, especially when you have a kiddo over here who has really big behavior, it is overwhelming. It is hard. And I want to say it is hard. And what are the signs in our kids? They are different. It's hard. There is no list. But what you're pointing to, and I think it is the most important thing in the entire world, is present day parenting. Be present. Notice. Look around your home. Look at your children. We are so busy. We're so busy and we're going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and we're trying to fix everything all the time. And if there's this one thing that this whole COVID thing, I think, has brought to a lot of families that I have worked with too, in the beginning, they had a lot of anxiety. How are we going to get this done? I don't know how we're going to get this done. My family's going to drive me crazy. And now that there's some of the barriers are starting to come down and we're allowed to open up a bit more, I have to tell you, a lot of families are like, oh, I've spent more time with my kids and I've learned more about them and we've worked through this and I think I like this. Mm-hmm. And the more we can notice, and noticing that quiet child and noticing the loud child, but noticing, what do you see? And paying attention to, as a parent or an individual, how does it feel when you're with that person? It's even in relationship. It's like when your husband comes home or your fiance comes home and you're like, oh, something doesn't feel right. There's something. And I did a live a couple of weeks ago. It's not about saying, hey, what's wrong? It's about saying, hey, what's going on? Yeah. Something feels different. What's going on? Because if we say what's wrong, what happens?
I was going to say, I think if and when you see signs that you're concerned of, the pivotal point is how you bring it up. And yep. There's going to be mistakes made. My dad, he is a parenting coach as well. He's a wonderful father, but he had one of those damaging moments with me where we were on a hike and I was totally struggling and I was pissed and I was complaining the whole time. And he said, the hike isn't hard, you're out of shape. And I ran the rest of the hike. Oh. And he tells the story. He's like, as soon as I said it, I knew I shouldn't have said it. And it took him a few years to come to me and say, hey, that was a moment as a dad where I failed. And that was a damaging moment and I still think about it. But the fact that he came back and owned up was so powerful and empowering to me as a child, that it's not, I didn't grow up thinking, well, everything they say is right until I'm older and then I start to resent stuff. The fact that all of my parents, my dad, my stepmom, and my mother, come to me now and say, looking back on it, that was a moment where I can see why it affected you, A, B, or C. And I think when you bring these things up with your kids, the difference between, like you said, well, what's wrong? Or I noticed, it seems like you're skipping food. So what's the deal with that? Versus I'm feeling really concerned as a parent and I love you so much. And I just want to make sure you're okay. Yes. Is there anything I should know about? Like worlds apart. And yes. Even the answer is no, I'm fine. I'm nothing. The way you bring it up will really impact if they ever come to you again in the future. And
you're naming one of the most important elements of creating intimacy and trust in any relationship, and that's called repair. Mm-hmm. It's the most important thing. And I think so many of us parents, we make our mistakes and then we don't want to look at the fact that we made a mistake. We want to just make it go away. But the thing is in an instant, just own it. When you can own it in an instant. And I recently was a jackass to my son over this homeschooling thing, because I am not a highly like categorizing technical. I am not. It overwhelms me. I feel like I get short circuited, and we had to do everything online. And I was a jackass. And I'm like, but I'm wrong. The way that I'm responding to you, it's not nice. It's not your fault. It's because I don't know how to do it, which makes me feel incompetent, which makes me feel like a bad mom. I feel like I'm getting everything wrong. And instead of figuring it out, I'm taking it out on you, and I apologize. And you said something earlier too. If you can't do it, find somebody else who can do it for your children, right? So I'm divorced. So I called their dad. I can't do this. And he's so much better at it. I'm like, even when my kids are at my house, we call their dad, because it's the reality. But being able to make repair teaches your children to trust you more, and you create so much more intimacy. And again, this is in any relationship. It doesn't matter if it's your kids or your significant other or even your own parents, by the way. And you also teach the other person it's okay to make a mistake. It doesn't make you an awful person. It makes you human.
Right. Well, it's like that saying that it doesn't matter, what you do, it's how you handle it next, or it doesn't matter mistake, it's how you handle that mistake. And I think that's so true, and exactly right. Doing that with your kids or with your partner starts to teach those people, observing, I can make a mistake, and I can also observe that mistake and look back on it and see, okay, how could I have maybe done that better, and navigate that. I think it teaches owning up. It teaches people, it teaches your kids how to be self-conscious of like how they're making their choices and how those choices affect other people.
Yeah.
And to be attuned to how they affect other people. I mean, there's so many great lessons in there. And I have to make one more point about, if you can't handle it, getting somebody else who can, whether it's, calling a co-parent or a sister, or getting your kid a therapist. The fact that my parents, they were the ones that put me into BYBA, and they were just encouraging me to do something extracurricular and something that would kind of expand. And the fact that they prioritize that for me, and looking back and having talked to them now, them just knowing like, we didn't know what to do, and we knew you were struggling and didn't know why or what it was, and you didn't want to talk about it. So we were like, this might help. And it totally did. And just that action as an adult, looking back, knowing that was an act of parenting, them saying, we don't know, but this person does.
Yep.
Even though they weren't involved, and I didn't talk to them about it for so long, knowing that was them showing me support, was stepping out and saying somebody else can handle this better. It's so powerful.
And it goes back to, I'm stepping up because I see you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what to do, and I have your back. I might not have the answer, but I need you to know I will find it. Right. And and I want to we need to wrap it up. But the thing that this is all about, again, to me, this is my cornerstone to it all. The more seen, heard, and accepted I feel, the more I know you have my back, the more I know I belong to you and this family, the more confident I feel, and this body image shit doesn't get out of whack. It just doesn't. Because there's no problem. It just, I'm loved as I am. I don't have to change anything. I'm okay. This body image thing just doesn't, I'm not going to say it doesn't blossom, because there could be other reasons, but I'm going to say that the propensity for it to happen is about this big.
Yeah. And I think it can change. I think it's the difference between, I need to start working out because I hate myself, versus, I really, like, I'd love to just be stronger.
Yes.
Those are two, and that's what I work with now, like talking about all of this stuff, and I've done all this work. I still struggle with body image every single day, and had a total meltdown about it the night before you contacted me to do this with you. I thought it was so serendipitous. I got this message. I was like, okay, universe, I hear you. Like, I'm going to focus on work through this because I had a total meltdown. I was doing a workout with my fiance and I really struggled through it. And just like the shame, it went from this workout is hard to my fiance won't love me if I'm not fit. And
Yes.
he was like, what? He was like so confused. And I had a total meltdown because it's so hard to get out of that spiral and it can happen so quickly. But coming back to even having way back in high school, these tools, they resurface in these times where
Yeah.
even believe it in the moment, I can start telling myself like this fitness is for my heart health and it's so that I can be strong because I want to climb mountains and I want to do all these things physically. And it doesn't have to come from a place of I need to change because I suck. And it doesn't have to blossom from self-hatred. It can just be, I'd love to be stronger. Like I'd love to just be physically stronger and I'm not weighing myself and I'm not measuring. I'm just exercising and it can be just that. And it is so freeing to, and even eating healthy. It doesn't have to be a diet. It can just like, don't put crap in your body because regardless of who you are in size and age, it just healthy food is healthy. And you can make that choice from a place of like, I feel better when I do this. And that can be it.
And we talked about that yesterday, where Kirsten was another woman on, and she had a lot of shaming growing up. And when she was really clear about, I just want to feel good. I just want to feel good, is when everything changed. When I was pregnant with my first child and recognized how good it felt and how amazed I was by my body, and I just wanted to keep feeling this way, is when the eating disorder for me completely went away. And it's an interesting thing. I love that you brought up working out and such, because, you know, with my boyfriend today, he's this ultra marathon runner and biker, and he's like this uber athlete, right? And when we met, he says, so what do you do to work out? I said, well, I walk my dog. And he goes, no, seriously. I'm like, I walk my dog. And he goes, no, seriously, what do you do? I'm like, look, dude, like I walk my dog and I'm gonna tell you right now, I love it. It makes me happy. It's my happy place. And it makes me feel good in my body. And I don't care what you or anybody else thinks, because here in Boulder, it's a very active community. And I'm like, I'm not running up any freaking mountain. I'm not biking because it hurts my knees. And I'm not all about pain. I'm not. And here's the interesting thing, because I owned that, because I allowed that truth for me to believe that truth, not him. I don't give a shit about what he believes about what I want. But because I honestly owned it, I was like, this is the God's honest truth about me. And this is what I love to do. I've done more physical stuff since then, you know? And when I've done it, I don't look at it like I can't do this. I just do it like, I'm gonna try it because it looks like it's fun. I just want to have fun. And because the things that I do that are physical, I do because I want to have fun and I want to feel good. I'm in great shape, you know, and I eat based on how it makes me feel. I think it's the key to everything, but you have to own it first within yourself.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about, and I love that it gets brought up too with adults, because we talk about this so much with kids in BYBA, with kids our age and kids younger, about what health at every size means, what intuitive eating means, and what joyful movement is. And I still hear it with adults where it's like, I struggled so much with workouts, and then I just realized I found this beautiful walk in the neighborhood for my dog, and I do it every day, and it's so exciting. And one thing we talked a lot about in BYBA was there doesn't have to be all this pressure with exercise. Like, cut out all of the emotional stuff. It's scientifically proven that movement is just good for you, and you might live longer. So find a movement that brings you joy and do it a little bit, as much as you can. And it starts to blossom into, okay, well, that for me, getting a dog was a huge pivotal point, because I work from home and so I just sit all day. So it wasn't good for my blood flow. It wasn't good for my body. It was hurt my joints. And when I got a dog, I had to go out. And so it was like, oh, maybe we'll go on a hike today. Maybe we'll go a little further. Maybe I'm going to run with her for just a little bit. And now we live out on a hobby farm. And so I have to get outside, and joyful movement for me is getting up from my desk and like checking on my chickens and weeding the garden. And then I come back, and it makes such a big difference in happiness, which encourages you to find more joyful movements. It makes you more curious when there's not all this pressure that you have to burn this many calories and meet this mark and do it for an hour, and you better sweat this much and drink a whole gallon of water. And it starts to become so it bogs you down, I think.
Yeah.
And same with eating. And I think, again, just like find things that make you feel good physically and spiritually, and continue that, and everything else falls into place, weight included. There's you as an individual have a weight that's meant for your body.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter what it is if you're doing all
right.
these things that bring you joy.
And at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. It's just be happy. Just be happy, because when you're happy, you're more attractive. People want to be with you, and you want to be with more people, and life is good. Well, Maia, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and you have so much to contribute. I really appreciate it so much. And I love your hair. It just, I saw her earlier. I'm like, oh my gosh, your hair looks so beautiful. It does. You look beautiful. So thank you again. And so are you, before we end, and I have like 2 minutes because I've got painters and I've got to go paint my house. Are you coaching these days? Is that part of what you do? Or are you doing something completely different?
I am not right now. No, I have my own, my business is called Your Cause Consulting. So I do social media marketing and event planning for small businesses right now. I try to be involved in the body positivity movement, mostly for myself, but also just with my friends. And I try to just emulate that, but I'm not actively involved as much as I used to be. But I think it's just like it's a personal lifestyle, really.
Yeah.
And I try to continue for myself because it makes me happier and better as like it just trickles into everything else. So right now I actually work in marketing full time, but
cool. Well, thank you so much for everything that you do. I appreciate it. This is Christine Lackey. Thank you so much for joining us today and this week. It's an important topic that affects all of us. Doesn't matter who we are, it just does. And at the end of the day, I hope you're getting what we're saying, which is be curious about yourself and how you feel, and curious with other people. Find something that just brings you joy in the movement. Make your eating about how does it make your body feel, not what it looks like, but how does it make you feel, and notice the judgments. And when you catch the judgments, don't judge the judgments. Just go, oh, I caught a judgment. That wasn't very kind of me. Move on. And one of the other things is if you're struggling with your body and how you feel in it, find one thing that you like about your body and focus on it. The more preoccupied you can be with something that makes you feel good, it will grow. When you're preoccupied with the negative stuff, that grows. We don't want that to grow anymore. Just notice it. It was like when I started walking my dog, I just noticed, wow, this feels good. And when I came home, I would look in the mirror and be like, I don't look so bad today. And I didn't look so bad today because I felt so good, So tomorrow is the last day of the Body Image Week, and it will just be me sort of wrapping this up and concluding all of these things together, answering any questions. I've been getting a lot of really cool feedback. I really appreciate it. Keep it coming. And on that note, Maia, thanks again. I love you tons. My kids say hello. They miss you.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
I know.
That's crazy.
All righty. And everybody else, take care. Hope to see you all tomorrow. Okay, bye.